So the second point of the justification given by the Supreme Court is even more dubious in a way. They say the incest law serves to prevent or reduce the risk of passing on inheritable genetic disabilities. So the first objection would of course run, and it's quite common, or was quite common tonight. It's an objection also formed by one of the judges of the Supreme Court who voted against the general vote, or the majority vote. First objection: why should that be so bad? And should the Supreme Court have the right to introduce eugenics into law or its interpretation? Should the Supreme Court have a right to impose eugenical standards on Germany's laws? Now, I am not totally opposed to eugenics myself. I'm of the opinion that you should not bring suffering or more suffering into the world if you can prevent it, and if you can have the ability to create, well, individuals who are less suffering than the first ones. I am myself somewhere in the autistic spectrum, and sometimes have a feeling that had my parents known before how I would develop and what I would become, then well, I have a feeling that it would have been better if they had aborted me and raised another child instead of me, who would have been a little happier, a little more talkative, a little less isolated. But still, the Supreme Court should not make decisions on eugenics. They should be careful with that, not least because Germany has a bad record of practicing in the practice of eugenics. But taking aside these eugenical considerations, suppose that the risk of genetical degeneration of people is bad. Let's assume it. But then still it is a risk that you may very easily prevent without condemning and forbidding incest altogether. So that's like killing, to shoot with cannons on sparrows. That's a German saying. That's like shooting sparrows, shooting sparrows with cannons. It is a risk that is that is controllable. There is, for example, a brand new technological invention just been invented yesterday. It's called contraception. My brother objected to that comment, to that comment, and said it's against sexual freedom to legally force someone to use contraception. But I think that this objection would be ridiculous, because how can you even think about not being able, given sexual freedom, not being able to prescribe contraception, to force contraception on people, when you currently have an incest law in power that forbids sexual contact altogether? So this is ridiculous, and you can prescribe contraception in order to decrease and prevent that risk. And also, with growing knowledge in genetics, it is, or at least will become possible to make clearer predictions as to the risk factors when incestuous people are planning to have a baby. If they have perfect genes, then there is no problem in conceiving a child. If there are many defects, well, then they should be careful, or they could be advised to be careful. But on the other hand, and this is what makes the incest law and today's justification of the Supreme Court really and most ridiculous, couples with a risk of passing on genetic disease even higher than the average risk of that incestuous couples have of passing on genetic disease to their offspring, are not forbidden to have children. You can have couples where both of them have a genetic, or are rotten with disease, that they are very likely to inherit, but the two are not related to each other. They can have children, they can even marry. Very old women are not forbidden to become pregnant and bear the child. It's completely legal. And so because of all that, because the that is to say, because the Supreme Court's decision and justification are not valid, I fully support Patrick's attorney Hendrik Wilhelm in his plans to carry the case to the European Court of Human Rights. I fully support Winfried Hassemeer, that is the Supreme Court judge, the only one of the 8 Supreme Court judges who voted against his 7 colleagues, thinking the German incest law is indeed unconstitutional. And I also fully support Patrick S.'s mercy petition. Now, after the Supreme Court decision, he is about to be sent to jail again, to the Minister of Saxony, Georg Milbradt. And if you'd like to support that petition too, the Minister has a contact page on his website, and I'll give the